El Gaucho.
El Gaucho, thank you. So we hosted a nice event at El Gaucho for Michelle, which she has told us raised a considerable amount of money and was able to help her get elected for the first time in 2014. So since that time, Michelle's been very kind and either by herself or with her friend Cindy Pauly, come to give us a legislative update about what's happening in Olympia. What happens in Olympia affects us for sure. And at the end of the day, having a representative that's a dentist in Olympia is very important for us. It doesn't matter if you're an R or a D, it's important for us. And the other thing that's really important to know is that keeping somebody in Olympia requires dollars. That's the climate of Olympia. So if you just saw Perionics, so we make a donation to Michelle's reelection campaign, I would really urge you just to make a small contribution on your own as well. Those dollars turn into votes, and those votes matter for us as dentists having a representative in Olympia. So please give a warm welcome to my friend. I'm hoping this is going to work. Okay. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for showing up tonight. And I thought I would start off. How do I turn this? Wait. Do it over here. How do I turn? I am so not cool.
Nice work, Michelle. This is state
Oh, you
government.
can turn it on. Okay, so it just so happens when you turn on multiple devices, they make work better. Okay, so here's my path to Olympia. So I first want to talk about how I got started. So I was just a regular old dentist, just like you guys, right? And dental therapy was coming forward. I was pretty active in the Washington State Dental Association and Seattle King County Dental Association. And I was like, this is insane. Like, how is it that somebody with 1 to 2 years of training can do extractions? And they're like, oh, it's just all poor people. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're the ones that have got the worst mouths, right? Like in general, and they're not taking as good care of themselves. And so I came down to Olympia, and it was both myself, Cindy Pauly, and a bunch of other dentists, and we came down and we had some doors open in front of us, and we had some doors closed. And with the doors that had opened up, we wound up stopping dental therapy that year and made friendships with a lot of the legislators, and they said, you should run for office. And I was like, well, I'm not qualified. I'm a dentist. I don't know anything, like seriously, when I first started, when Cindy and I first started, it's kind of embarrassing because I did not pay attention for civics classes. I don't know, did you guys pay attention? I sure did, because I took civics in high school, the last civics class, and I was so boy crazy, there's no way I was thinking about government, okay? And so fast forward, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna be a dentist, I'm gonna be a dentist, I just math science, I don't have to do any of that government stuff. And so we literally had to go online and learn how a bill was passed. I mean, it was like, legislature for dummies. I mean, we're like, okay, this has to do, and we would do our little powwows. But anyhow, so I had a bunch of doors open, and they said, first they told Cindy, you should run for office, and she's like, no, I'm not that dumb. I have a friend though that is, and she instead. Okay. And they're like, yeah, it won't affect your practice at all. it's only, 60 days a year on the off year, and then it's 105 days on the even years, and it's not that big a deal. No, it actually is a big deal. It's a lot of work. And so anyhow, when I first decided to run for office, I was like, okay, so I am going to move back home where I grew up, and I think that is going to be my best option for running. And so once I announced that I was running for office, which was November of 2013, and the election was 2014. So I remember Tom was asking me, he said, was it 2013 or 2014? It may have been 2013. So anyhow,
It's Tony's fault.
okay, so anyhow, Tom reaches out to me out of the blue. Okay, so I think everybody here has got a great Tom story. Okay, so Tom reaches out to me out of the blue. Apparently, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, I also did not pay attention with computers. I thought computers were bad. Okay, I was so wrong. Okay. Actually, could you come over here and help me out? This is Caitlin. She's fantastic, by the way. Okay, she helps make my life fun. Okay, so Tom reaches out to me and he's like, I heard you were running. I don't even know your politics. I just know we need a dentist in Olympia. And he said, we're going to throw a fundraiser. So he did not know me from Adam. He did not know me at all. And he is so kind and so generous that he just said, we're gonna do El Gaucho. That night, I raised $12,000. Now, when you are first running for office, that is the most important thing, is to be able to raise money. That is what people look at. That's what makes you a credible candidate. And because otherwise people are like, oh, you're going against an incumbent, you don't have a chance at all. Nobody knows who you are. And it's kind of this weird thing where the lobbyists, then they don't give you the time of day, and it's like this whole synergistic thing. So the fact that Tom came out of the blue and called me and helped raise that much money, that was huge, and I would not be in Olympia without his help. So thank you, Tom. So anyhow, so the election, I ran against a long-term incumbent. It is in a very swing district, in fact, the most swing district in our state. So I get beat up by Democrats, Republicans, everybody. And I am a Republican, but I like to say I'm a normal Republican. In fact, I only got the endorsement of the Republican Party 2 out of 6 times. This year I didn't get it because I'm friends with a guy who's gay and I supported him, and they're like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, I don't care. So don't support me, it's all good. And it is what it is. But I won that first election, not on election night. I won it as the ballots trickled in, and it was at 50.6%. I mean, so it was very close, very tough race, and would not happen without Tom. Okay. Did it turn off again? I think it turned off again. Okay. Maybe it's just huge. I don't know. I just so late. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I wanted to first talk about current issues because there's a lot of things in Olympia that affect dentistry. A lot of people, I feel like politics is so polarizing that so many people are like, ooh, I don't want to get involved. I see what happens on a national stage. They act, quite honestly, like kindergartners, and a lot of times, and I think it turns people off of politics. Unfortunately, legislators and politicians are the ones that determine what you do for your whole livelihood. And it really does affect you. So I think one of the things that I've heard from dentists overwhelmingly is the workforce shortage issue. There's a couple pieces to that. One part is that we have not kept up with educational slots for any of the dental workforce. And I will tell you, it's been the same thing across the board in a majority of other industries as well. And the frustrating part was like, you take, for example, like Shoreline Community College. Shoreline Community College put in a capital budget request, and the way that the schools do it is they put in a capital budget request. They say, we want to create all these slots. We want to expand the building. We want to do X, Y, Z. And they come to the legislature and they ask for money. So we have 3 budgets. One budget is the capital budget, that is the brick and mortar. And so, for example, the Shoreline Community College, they said 2019, they're like, oh yeah, well, we want to expand our dental hygiene program. So I was like, yeah, I want to expand the dental hygiene program too. So I fought to make sure that we got money for that. Sure enough, Shoreline Community College comes back and says, nah, we're gonna close it. Thanks for the money, we're actually gonna use it for something else, and we're gonna close it. And luckily, I got myself and quite a few other legislators on board to at least get some of the slots moved over to UW. We still do not preserve that number, but there are a few other schools now that are popping up because we have, that's one of the things I've been focused on is saying, hey, we need to prioritize the capital budget dollars to make sure that we have slots available for the jobs that we have in the marketplace, not getting a whole bunch of opera degrees or something like that. Like we need people, we need a workforce. So that's one of the things. We do have a couple other schools that are coming on board. So hopefully that will get a little bit better. One of the other things was the dental compact bill. So I passed the first dental compact legislation in the country. And I believe, because once we get, I believe, up to 7 states, I think we're already at 6 that pass it, then that allows it so that hygienists can work across the border. So at least for all of the border cities, that will make things a lot easier for them to get hygienists. And the more hygienists that we get into our state, the better it will be for all of us overall. And then the other one is increasing the scope of practice for dental assistants. So traditionally, I am usually not as supportive of scope of practice issues. However, the hygienists have always pushed the dental therapy bill. And I'm like, well, hey, all hygienists are going to go off and become a dental therapist. I mean, what are we going to do? So I just said, just for fun, let's see what it would take if there was additional training for a dental assistant to be able to do a pro-fee. So the hygienist flipped out. I got on their national radar. In fact, I was in Idaho at a resort, and I'm sitting in this hot tub, and I knew this lady, and she's like, oh, hi, dentist, and she's from like North Carolina or something. And I was like, oh, I'm a dentist from Washington. And she's like, oh, do you know Michelle? And I was like, so that riled them up so much. Right now, part of the agreement with the dental therapy bill that passed, that expanded it to, which I was very much opposed to, and so was the WSCA. But one of the things that did pass was to try to figure out what we can do to do additional training for assistants to either do some sort of super gingival scaling or something along that lines. Right now there's currently, I just texted Bracken, and he said that they're still negotiating and they have not come up with anything yet. So, but there will be legislation for that.
Michelle, have you softened your stance on dental therapists at all?
Have I softened it? So my whole thing is there should be parity of education. So and that's the biggest thing. So what has passed is 2-year training, and I personally don't think that that's enough. I really don't. And I have a funny feeling that a lot of the dental therapists that are coming out will likely become hygienists. Like, I don't know how many people are going to want in their practice with them having the liability to do extractions. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys are like, hey, that's what I've always wanted in my practice. I know for me, I would not have wanted that because you're held responsible prefer that, right? So I feel like you have to have a parity of education, and it's frustrating because, and I'll talk about it, but in the legislature, I assumed that on healthcare, you would have a team of legislators that had healthcare background. So when I first came down to Olympia, one of the guys I was friends with was Mike Hope, and I was like, "You're a police officer. Why are you on healthcare?" He goes, "Oh, it's because I work out." Like literally, like the amount of knowledge. I am the only person who has been there. Like there was one nurse since I've been here. She is now retired. That was Eileen Cody, who's the chair. But other than that, I mean, the amount of healthcare background is next to none. And it's so frustrating for me because it's like, I just sit there and I'm just like, okay, because, people will mix up things like, I guess what's normal for us, like the difference between like an opioid or, Tylenol or, you know what I mean? Just like it's just amazing to me how little that the average legislator, the knowledge that the legislator has on healthcare issues. And it's a little frustrating for me. So one of the other things I did want to talk about were the legislative initiatives that some of them are going to be on the ballot. Some of them have passed the legislature. So when I first came into Olympia, the balance of power was in the House. The Democrats had control, but they only had control by one vote. And in the Senate, the Republicans had control, but they only had control by one vote. So we all had to work together. So fast forward to today, and Democrats more likely than not are going to get a supermajority in both chambers. They are only one vote away from a supermajority now in both the House and the Senate. And the bills that get passed are very different than the bills that get passed when I first got into office. So, for example, police pursuits, right? Because there was this whole dialogue of, oh, hey, we, what do they call it? They call it a victimless crime. Like if you had your car stolen, there's no victim there. It's just property. It's just a property thing, right? And so we pass all this legislation, and then we're like, oh, that's weird. The crime went up, and then people are complaining because their insurance rates go up, right? And so all of these things will affect your bottom line. I have had so many dentists come to me, and they're like, I have, like there's people on the street right in front of my dental office, and it's like a deterrent. I cannot get them off the street. The city won't do anything. I mean, there's nothing I can do. Or, hey, I had my dental office broken into numerous times, right? And I think that we've seen that. And if not, your insurance is gone up also, right? So one of the other ones that we passed in the legislature. So basically, there's 7 initiatives. 6 of them came to the legislature. One of them just got the signatures for it, and it's very difficult to get enough signatures. And to me, I feel like this is kind of a balance of power where the people get to decide. And it's like, hey, did you like what we passed? Great, then we can keep the law. Did you not like what we passed? Then it should be repealed, okay? And the 2 other ones that passed, which were the repeal, which was the vehicular pursuit and the Parents' Bill of Rights, because a lot of parents were very upset that they did not have access to the curriculum. They were not being involved in the schools, and that passed. And then also preventing a state income tax. And I thought it was very interesting that they were originally going to ignore everything, and then last minute they said, oh, no, we'll do these 3, but then the other 3, we think that we can get the people's support on. So the Democrats said, no, we don't think we can get the people's support if it goes to initiative, and they actually voted to support and pass those. So the ones that are going to be on the ballot is the state income tax, and right now it is currently a capital gains tax. The capital gains tax. It is currently for a small number of people. However, once this type of tax comes in my opinion, since I've been there long enough, I have seen an appetite for taxes. I personally believe it will be expanded. And once it's in, good luck getting it out. So, and then the other one is, the long-term care plan. So the long-term care plan, that's the payroll tax that everybody's paying into. It originally started because we have a budget shortfall. We have a budget shortfall with the number of people who are retiring. And we do not have enough money to pay for everybody to go on Medicaid. So then they said, well, we need a revenue source. So they decided it was going to be payroll tax. However, those are not financially, the actuaries are not correct. So if this tax stays in, it will be increased later on. And I think that is a concern for a lot of people, but we'll see. We'll see what the public wants. And then the other one is the Climate Commitment Act, and a lot of people are like, oh, we gotta save the environment. I'm like, okay, I agree, we gotta save the environment. So you have to ask yourself, what is the tax? What projects do they do, and what will be the overall consequence? And is this what the people want, right? So I always feel that at the end of the day, it's not my money, it is your money. And quite honestly, the taxes affect us. It affects us in our personal lives, it affects us in our businesses and everything else. And the Climate Commitment Act, it increased gas prices by 50 cents, and it also increased all of our energy costs by 20%. And it also increased all the energy costs and the gas tax for all the states. So then the state had a budget shortfall as well there. So many of the projects that are there, a lot of them cover things like bike path and pedestrian walkways, which I think are fantastic. That's fine. But then the question is that, and then I said, well, how are these projects going to help save the environment? And they said, well, because if we put in more bike paths, people are going to bike to work instead of driving their car. And I'm like, I don't know if that's realistic for the average person in Washington. I don't know how many people are going to get off their cars if we put more bike paths. I could be wrong. We will find out as the initiative comes forward and then the last one is natural gas ban. And what's interesting with that particular bill, that bill was done, it was one of the last nights of session, and we had commitments from all these Democrats. We have to get 14 Democrats. We got 14 Democrats going. We're sorry, it ain't gonna pass. We got 14 Democrats. And one by one, each one of those Democrats were called in to the speaker's office. The governor called them in, said he was going to veto all our bills. Democrats said, the speaker said she was going to remove their, this is what they told me. They said, no, we got threatened. They were going to remove our committees, and so they caved. And it took 9 hours for that to happen. So that happened at the wee hours of 3 o'clock in the morning, and we passed the bill. The result of that was that all PSE customers immediately have a 20% increase, and it is a phase out of all the natural gas. I personally believe that many of these are going to pass, but we'll see. We'll see what the public wants, and I mean, maybe you guys are like, hey, I never really liked natural gas in my house, and I want to spend $50,000 to convert it all to electric. And if that's the case, because I always feel like the government should be of the people. And if that's what the people want, then they can have it. But we'll see. So, okay, so dental insurance legislation. So I have to say, one of the other things that helped get me into office was rallying up so many dentists, because I would literally just mention the words Delta Dental, and I swear it's like all the dentists were like, right? Okay, so we have gotten a little bit creative over the years, okay, because Delta Dental's gotten creative, right? So one of the things that we're focused on is what's called a minimum loss ratio bill. And, because you have to figure out, like, how do you take down the big bear, right? And the key with the minimum loss ratio is it basically says that with the benefits that people are paying, should, that they have to pay out, I believe we decided it was going to be 70% or 73%, I think is what the number is. And so 73% of what they collect has to be paid out in benefits. And I will tell you that dental insurance companies are not very happy about that bill at all, because the medical already has that. They already have a minimum loss ratio. So you can't just collect and then not pay out, right? And Delta Dental is like, but wait a second here. What about all of the charitable things that we do? That should be included. And it's like, no, actually, that shouldn't be included. I really don't think it should, unless that's what the people who are paying the money in for their insurance. If we have people who are paying money into insurance, if they say, I really don't want to get a filling, I would rather have it go to pay for your mobile van, right? Like, I would rather have it go to something else. But I think at the end of the day, the average person says, hey, I'm paying in, my employer's paying in, and I deserve to have a certain amount of payback on that. So that is one of the bills that's going to be going through. And we'll see how, because session is always interesting. See, there's bills that you think that are going to make it through, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess it's not coming through this year. So, and then one of the other ones, the provider rate increases. See, this is how crazy the Delta Dental is. Okay, so last year, all the providers got together, because you know how dentists have not been getting a rate increase. It just so happens that none of the other providers have either. Not the chiros, not the docs, not the nurse practitioners, nobody's been getting provider rate increases, okay? However, every single year, all the health insurance companies come to the legislature, come to the statewide insurance commissioner. They go to the insurance commissioner every year and they say, okay, so we paid out all this stuff, now we want a rate increase. So for example, Willamette got a 14% fee increase, okay? And so all these insurance companies come in every year and they get rate increases. So everybody's paying more, but then the providers aren't making any more. So it's like, where's the money going? Is it going to your mobile van? Is it going for advertising? I don't know. Where's it going? Right? And so anyhow, they all got together. We had a bill this year that said if the insurers got a rate increase, that all of the providers should get a rate increase as well. Okay? So here we are in healthcare, and sure enough, good old Paul Harris, who has always kind of stabbed dentists in the back. So anyhow, just saying, I've been dealing with him for years. And anyhow, so he comes through and he's got an amendment on the bill to remove dentistry. And I said, well, wait a second here. Why are we removing dentistry? Like, this was a whole coalition. And he said, oh, well, because Delta Dental said that you put it in last minute. And I said, no. I have documentation. From the very beginning, this was a coalition. This was a coalition that I had formed, right? And I'm like, no. We were all in as a group, and we decided that if they started breaking us up, we were not going to let the bill pass. So then I'm kind of freaking out because I'm like, I don't know. Because sometimes you go to people and they're not true to their word. So I go back to all the other groups and I'm like, hey, like, he just got an amendment passed that gutted dentistry. Are you guys okay? Like, how do you guys feel? Because they're like, no, if dental's out, Michelle, then we're gonna let the bill die. And I was like, oh my goodness, I love you guys. So unfortunately, the bill died, but it will come back this year, and I think that there's enough motivation for it to pass. And then of course he came back later and was like, oh, I guess I was lied to. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens in Olympia. We get lied to on a regular basis, and I showed you the documentation that the dentists were involved all year long, and that's what happened. So, because the problem is if that bill passed and dentistry was out, it would be very difficult for us to ever get that rate increase again. So, and then one of the other things that we are working on as well is removing some of the prior authorization stuff. I don't know if realistically we can get rid of all the prior auth, but I do believe that there is enough momentum in Olympia, because that is a method, in my opinion, the insurance companies use so that they just don't have to pay themselves. And my whole thing is either you're gonna pay or not, and line out what the benefit is, and either pay or not. And especially for dentistry, it's like it maxes out at $1,500. Oh, that was the other thing too, is that we're also talking about increasing the amount, because the fact that there is something called insurance with an annual maximum of $1,500, like that is the dumbest thing ever. That's like saying, oh yeah, you've got $20,000 insurance on your house. And it's like, okay, so it burns down and you get $20,000, like $20,000 bucks, but like, what's that? Like if something catastrophic happened to your mouth, you tell me how far the $1,500 bucks is gonna go. Because it's not insurance. To me, that's not an insurance plan. So practice stuff. So here's the crazy thing, okay? So we have so many, like, the hard part is that because the average legislator does not have a high understanding of dentistry, of healthcare, of anything, that they get confused. They get so confused. They don't know the difference between how much education that a dental therapist has, how much education a dental assistant has, how much education an oral surgeon has. They're like, oh, it's just dental, right? And it is very frustrating for me because I'm like, these are very different types of providers, right? And there's different education levels for a reason, right? So one of the issues is the dental therapy. They just recently passed that they're allowed on to community health centers. There was an issue, and I need to double check on the status of that, but I do know that the denturists were trying to place implants. They got it approved on their board, but we're fighting that because the board is not allowed to approve a scope of practice issue. So that was an interesting thing. And then the dental assistants, like I said before, we're trying to expand the scope of practice, but I am a huge advocate that whatever the education level is, to increase, to be able to do supergingival scaling, that I think that the dental assistants should have that. So there should be some way that we can educate them as to how to do it and how to do it safely. And so those are the things that we're working on. But what I did want to tell you is about the optometrists. So there was a bill this last year, and unfortunately, because the ophthalmologists, there are a small number of ophthalmologists in comparison to the optometrists, kind of like oral surgeons compared to dental hygienists, right? There's just a greater number. And we had, over the interim, they had different events that they were putting on. And they would have a laser, and they would walk, because they want to do laser surgery on the eye. Now you have to realize they don't take the training in school, okay? But they see the ophthalmologist using the laser, and they're like, well, that looks awful easy. And so they have this laser, and they have all the legislators coming in. They're like, ooh, that's fancy. That's a laser. And so they're like, see, look, you can put your finger back there, and because the laser cuts tissue, and you put your finger back there, and it doesn't hurt. See that? And I said, okay, so wait a second, but you're putting that in the eye. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so keratinized and non-keratinized tissue are very different. So if I put a drop of bleach on my finger, it will react very differently than I put a drop of bleach on my eye. And then all the legislators were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. So that was the training that they were doing across the state to show people how easy that laser was. So they were able to pass a bill after 1 weekend of training with this laser. And then I also said, well, what happens, because the training is also only on plastic people, right? Plastic mannequins. And I'm like, I also have an issue with that, because live people are very different than plastic mannequins, as we all know from doing lab, right? That tongue, saliva, right? And I'm just like, what happens when they move their head? And he goes, well, they won't move their head. And I'm like, okay, bless your heart, but I'm like, I don't know any person who sits still like 100%. Live patients do not sit still 100% of the time. And I'm just like, I don't think that this is the best thing for the people. I mean, the ophthalmologists were up in arms, and then of course, whenever there is a scope of practice issue, they always call it a turkey war. So they're like, oh, the ophthalmologists are just afraid of competition. I'm like, I actually don't think so, because they are so overbooked. I do not think that's the issue. I think they are absolutely concerned about patient safety. And I even asked the chair at the time, and I said, do you even know what the procedures are? Like in all honesty. I mean, because you have to realize that like at this point, this last year, I was in such a steep minority. Like he lifts the votes. He goes to his caucus and he says, okay, it's already agreed. We're all gonna vote for it. Yeah. And I said, would you be willing to do a colloquial on the floor? And what that means is that I get to ask him what the procedures are. And he said, no, Michelle, it doesn't matter what the procedures are, because it's gonna pass anyway. And this is like, that's how the bill passed. That's how the bill passed. And they just said, it doesn't matter what the procedures are, and we've already made a decision, I've already written the votes, and it passed. So, but there you go. So, and that is very similar to a lot of some of the other bills going to passing. So, since I have been in office, a lot has happened. A lot has happened. And like I said before, I came into the legislature very green thinking, more Pollyanna, like, oh, I'm here, I'm gonna save the world. and I will tell you, it's very different. Okay. But what I did think was that legislators don't care. That is one of the things I really truly believed, because when I first came down, I did have a lot of doors closed on me. What I have learned is that most of the legislators really truly do care. They don't understand the issues. And for you to go in and talk to them and develop a relationship with legislators, that is the most impactful thing that you can do. And that one of the things, like with John Gibbons, I mean, John Gibbons was down there a lot, and he had the ear of a lot of the Democrat legislators in his district. And he ran this last year. Unfortunately, he did not make it out of the primary. I was so hopeful that we could get another dentist in the legislature, because I can work very well with getting a lot of the Republican support, and I can get a lot of the Democrat support, but if you have the chair of the committee who's decided that they're gonna vote a certain way, they whip all the votes, and to have a Democrat, dentist in the legislature, that would be so wonderful to help get a more powerful voice in that, in that area. So, and a lot of people don't have the right information. Like one of the things when I first came down, it was like during the McCleary, I heard the McCleary problem, right? And you get lied to. You get lied to as a legislator on a regular basis. It is the weirdest thing. It's not like your practice, right? It is like night and day. And one of the things, we have some lobbyists coming in saying, hey, we're spending $55,000 per pupil per year, and we're paying too much. And then I had other lobbyists come in saying, hey, we're only paying $5,500 per year. We're not paying enough. And I spent hours and hours and hours with staff trying to figure out, like, how do we actually fund education? Because it is not an easy formula. And what I found was that some school districts were getting $55,000 a year. Some school districts were only getting $5,500 a year. And there were huge equity problems across the state. And so that's the thing, is it's like a lot of times you don't have the whole picture. And that is why it's so important for dentists to get involved, and for dentists to reach out to their local legislators, and for dentists to make those phone calls. Because I know that for a lot of people, it's like politics I'll admit, sometimes I get a pit in my stomach, dealing with all the animosity and stuff like that. And it's like, we need your help. We need your help. I need you to reach out to people. So. The other one that I thought was that all legislators were equal in their power. That is absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. And there is absolutely the king and queen, which is you've got the president of the Senate, and then you have the speaker of the House, and then you have the governor. Those are the three power players. Okay, they're the ones that put forward the budgets that they all three negotiate. Republicans are important because we are a large number of votes, but we are in the minority, right? Everything we have to do, like for example, with the natural gas bill, we had to get 14 legislators on our side, which we did for a hot minute. But then at 9 hours later, we didn't, right? And that's the thing, is that there's a huge hierarchy, and there are some people that if they put their name on a bill, the bill's automatically dead, right? So those relationships are very important, and that is one of the key things, because I learned really quickly. I was like, first I was like, I'm a legislator for all people, and then I was like, oh, that's not how this works. That is not how this place works, and I need to make friends. I need to make friends across the aisle. I need to make friends from every walk of life, and I have been there long enough to where, I think people trust me, because I'm really big on telling people like the pros and cons, who's going to be opposed to a bill, who's going to be supportive of a bill, and and kind of go from there, and just to be honest, I think that shows, and I have very good relationships with a lot of the Democrat legislators and Republican legislators, and that is honestly the only way I've been able to get anything done and anything passed. So the other thing that I thought was it was easy to pass a bill. I was like, oh, you just put the bill down and it just passes. It's actually a lot easier to kill a bill. And because if you can get the public involved, like even like when Cindy and I first came down, they said, we need 100 dentists, and we're looking around and we're like, well, there's like 12 of us. Okay, so it looks like we're just gonna do the job of 8 people. And people were like, oh my gosh, the dentists are everywhere, It was like, well, there's just 12 of us. But that's the thing, is it's like, and like we had a bill in 2018 where the hairdressers, they were trying to make it so the hairdressers could no longer become independent practices. They said, well, we want them to be paying into all of our, L&I and all that, all the state systems, and all the hairdressers like got up in arms. They came down in droves. Like you could not get rid of the hairdressers. I was like, oh, well, I feel like I need to do my hair a little bit better, And that's the thing, is it's like you get the people involved, and that's how you can kill a bill. So is dentists, for you guys to get involved, that is the most important thing. And then what can you do as an individual dentist to make a difference? So WSDA has got an action alert. I don't know if you guys are signed up to that or not. But I would definitely go online, go to WSDA, and ask to be part of that, because as bills are coming forward, they will text you, and and then we'll ask you guys to send a email to the legislators, and then I kind of work with Bracken, and I'm like, okay, we've only got like 12, okay? We gotta pump it out. We gotta pump it out a little bit more, right? Because sometimes dentists get busy and they're like, oh, is it that big of a deal? No, it's a very big deal. So those action alerts are very, very important. Another one is to meet with your local legislators and educate them. Now's the time. It is election time. People are very in tune to when they meet people. We have one guy, he shows up to everything. He's like just a local dentist from Puget, and he shows up to every single thing. And I'm like, and he's not even a WSDA member. I don't know if you gotta be a member, man. And but everybody knows him. And it's like, and that's the cool part, because then they'll text him and ask him, say, hey, Michelle just told me this, and he'll be like, yep, because it's like, if they have somebody local I mean, that is like, that helps out so much. And that was one of the things that like John Gibbons did with some of the Democrat legislators, where I was telling them one thing and then, you know, John would tell them the same thing. And when they're just getting it from more than one person, it just reinforces that. But yeah, and also you can log in online as the bills come forward to sign in, support or opposed. Every single time that I see a bill, that I have a bill at a hearing, I look at how many people have signed in, and you can sign in remotely now. So you don't even have to testify, but you just having your name on there, because I also scan through and I look for anybody in my district. I look at the number of people, so if there's, you know, 200 people in opposition and only 10 people in support, that says a lot, you know, because then you're like, oh, people actually care about this bill, I need to pay attention, right? And then get involved at all levels, because it, like in all honesty, the government, especially at the local levels, it affects your lives way more than what you think, so. Okay, and thank you so much for your time, and I thought I want to leave a little bit of time to answer any questions that you guys might have. So.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, can you tell us about the school in Yakima? There's a new health sciences school, I think
Yes.
dental school.
New dental school.
Was it state funded? How did the funding for that work? And,
Okay, so I don't know the full details. I have toured it while it was in the construction. I have not been back. One of the weird things is that they're very prideful that they don't look at, for admissions, they don't look at the DAT.
it was interesting. Yeah, I had
I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I'm like, huh. So they don't look at any tests, you know.
what I understood about part of the school's charter, and this was told to me by a young woman who is going to be in their first class.
Okay.
And so, yes, they don't look at the DAT. And then part of the school's charter was that there was this there's not even a formal application process.
Yeah.
There was like,
Yeah,
a set
it's
number
weird.
of students, there's like no application process. They just need to have a couple of letters of recommendation and have to have gone through this set education curricula, and then they that's what I was wondering.
So what they said to me, because I said, well, why? And they said, well, it's because we believe that the DAT is discriminatory against minorities and against people who come from adverse backgrounds. And I said, okay, well, the only pushback I have was I grew up in foster care, and I got like in the 98th percentile of the DAT, and that was the only thing that saved my bacon to get me into school. So I'm just putting it out there that just because a kid grows up poor, they can still perform well on a test. Like, that was my saving grace, because I was a really good test taker, right? I mean, I didn't have connections, I didn't have much of anything else. I mean, I was so grateful to get into UW because I couldn't afford, you know, I'll tell you guys, I had my daughter at 19, or got pregnant at 19, had her at 20, and you know, when I was in school, I started school early, so like I was literally pregnant as I was applying, and I had to wait until 14 days after, like I got the latest interview because I didn't want them to see me pregnant. And so it was 14 days after I gave birth. And my aunt came to me and she was like, what are you gonna wear? You gotta realize I was so poor, you guys, I was so broke. And I was like, well, I found this really nice skirt at the thrift shop. She goes, you are not gonna wear that. And she had me get my nails done for the first time. She got me a suit. And I was like, it's $100. She was like, it's okay. You know, because I had just gotten reconnected to her. And I don't know if I would have passed the interview with my little skirt from the Salvation Army, right? and you know, and then she had me go get my hair done and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're spending so much money on them. But that's the thing, is it's like, I was able to get in and they looked at me because of those test scores. So I just don't know how that's gonna work out, because their whole thing now is, you gotta have equity and inclusion and diversity and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, at the same time, dental school was hard. And I think if I was not a good test taker, I would not have made it through, because I had just had a little baby, right? Like, honestly, it was freaking hard, right? I think it's hard without a kid, right? And, had a baby with her divorce. I mean, it was awful, and so I don't know how that's gonna work out, but yeah, that's what they said. And they're just gonna let everybody in, and we're gonna see what kind of dentistry comes out. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you don't need kind of test scores, and maybe you don't have to do that well in school. And maybe you'll perform well in dentistry. I don't know. I think it's an interesting model.
Do you know how many students are enrolled in that school?
I do not off the top of my head, but I can find out and get back to you. But I know that they were going to do, what their big issue was they were having troubles getting faculty. And so we just last year, the companion bill we're at, but passed to allow them to have the same exemption that UW has for faculty, so that they don't have to be, that they can come from another country and still teach, so.
How was the facility?
Oh, it was big and beautiful. It was, it's nice and new, and it is definitely a different model. So I don't know how that's gonna work out, because I'm like, we'll see. Well, was not the person to form the school, so we'll see. But yeah.
How big is the class going to be?
I don't know off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, it was the first cycle was going to be less than what UW has, and then eventually they were going to try to ramp up to what UW has, if I remember right. So
You touched earlier on insurance, health insurance, and stuff like that. What about maximum? What's the likelihood of something like that changing the maximum?
Oh, I think that is very high, because when was the last time that was changed?
Never.
Right. Well, and that was the thing, because Bracken and I were kind of brainstorming, and I was like, I'm telling you, that's where you get them, because it ain't no insurance. And here's the cool part, is that the insurance commissioner, Patty Cooter, I have worked with her on several issues. We're kind of polar opposites in terms of some of our philosophies on certain topics, but I get along with her very well, and I feel very comfortable from our conversations that she is absolutely on board that, it's not an insurance. Like, to me, that's not insurance. That's a prepaid plan. And if you took how much people are paying every month plus what their employer pays every month, and you said, oh, hey, do you want to pay $800 a year with the hopes of getting a $1,500 return? Most, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever the premium is, but usually it's between $800 and $1,000. Like, that's not insurance for people. And so I think that some of those things that, especially with the minimum loss ratio, I think those are some of the things that the insurance companies are really scared of, because at the end of the day, you tell me how you're going to fight that dialogue. So what? You're going to collect money and you don't pay out on insurance? Medical pays out on insurance. Medical has a minimum loss ratio. So why don't you help them? And I'll tell you why. It's because before I got into office, when it came through, sure enough, they did the carve out, and here we are fighting to get it back in, right? Which is why I was like, oh, heck no. If we have the rate increase bill, the provider rate increase bill, and they carve dentistry out, good luck us ever getting that back in, right? Because it amazes me, because it's like, all it takes is a couple of people, and they're like, oh yeah, dental's different. That's what I hear all the time. Oh, dental's different. And it's like, but it's still a benefit to people. And why is it that they don't have to pay out?
It's obvious if you increase that, it could be more open for patients to get the care they need.
Right.
Yeah, less medical bill, less hospital visits.
Mhm.
I don't understand why they would do that.
Well, because if you, see, that's the other piece too. I'm interested to find out how much they spend on advertising. Because they're on buses. Do you know in the legislature, we have what's called TBW, okay? And TBW films all of us, okay? The only people who watch it are legislators and their wives, and
I
maybe a
watch
mom or
it,
two.
I watch it.
You do, okay, and Brandon. Okay, only because Brandon has turned into a political nerd, okay? But no, literally, we'll be on the floor and you can look on, because I have to look on TBW, I have some vision issues, so I can go on TBW so I can see who's speaking and stuff like that. So I follow along on TBW and it will tell you how many people are watching. And it's like me and 4 other people, okay? And nobody watches it. But I will tell you, who is the #1 advertiser? Why, it's Delta Dental. And it's I mean, they're smart. They're smart with their marketing, right? Like, think about it. They're smart with their marketing when they send in the explanation of benefits. And it says, hey, you know, we saved your smile today by screwing over the dentist. And, you know, you're like, yay, you know, and as a consumer, you're like, wow, you saved us that much money. And it's like, no, they didn't pay the bill. And then they screwed over the dentist and the dentist can't come back and collect on it. That's not a benefit to me. Like, that's you screwing over.
Someone went to school for 4 years.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Michelle, if someone was compelled, oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I would just like to say thank you for all you've done for dentists,
Thank
you know, and for the state of Washington, patients in the state of Washington. And I also want to echo Tom's point that, you know, I think it's really important that we all support you and other people who are allied with us. And so I'd like to make a contribution again.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, again, look, at the end of the day, the way that this thing works is we need money makes the machine work, and Michelle needs support. We're her community, and she represents our community in the field. So really, even if it's just $25 you can give, I really can make a contribution of some type. So if they wanted to do that, how would they go about doing that?
Well, so here's the funny thing is that when Tom asked me, I was like, I'm just gonna do this for Tom. I was not thinking I was gonna come here and do a fundraiser, okay? Because I just love Tom, and if Tom told me to, you know, figure out how to get over to Yakima and speak, I would do it, right? And so, so probably online, and you can do, put it on, what is it?
I'll
I
find
would
out.
put Michelle Caldier donate, I think is probably the best thing. But
On
I
there
can,
for staterepresentative.com/donate.
okay,
We'll send out,
good.
we'll send out that.
We'll send it out.
Okay, so I did not come prepared to get money, and but the one thing I will say is that typically I get beat up every election cycle. I mean, that is just part of the course. The primary this year was probably the spicier one. I had a Republican who recruited a Republican and a Democrat against me because the Democrats couldn't find anybody to run against me. And so then last minute, then they found a Democrat and then an independent jumped in. So I had, you know, 4 challengers. And so now I just have 1 challenger who is, we're in a swing district. They absolutely elect both Democrats and Republicans. But the Democrat is from, she's a legislator from Oregon. She voted for the Climate Commitment Act in her area, faced a recall election, won the recall election, but then lost her first re-election and then decided to move up. So I don't think that she's as hard of a challenger than I've had in the past, if I should say it. I think that's pretty fair to say. And, you know, because I've had really tough challengers before, and they'll put a ton of money on me. I think one of the things is that historically in my race, I've always outperformed in the general election. The primary election is where I get beat up the most, just because, you know, I'll just tell you, this election, I supported a man who was gay. I could care less if somebody's gay, and if that's your issue, then that's your issue, right? But I think, you know, he was a great person and I endorsed him. And so both sides of the aisle have got issues, okay? And our local Republican Party decided that they were going to endorse me. I'm like, you haven't endorsed me they'll endorse me 2 out of 6 elections anyway, so what's another one? and that's the thing, is it's like, I think at the end of the day, the general public likes me because I don't cater to extremes, you know? I don't think that that's the way that the government should work. And I also believe that the average person in my district could care less if someone's gay. I really don't think that's our issue. And if they want to, you know, recruit somebody against me and tear me down and you know, tell me that I'm not a real Republican anymore and send out all the stuff, then so be it. But you know, it's politics. You know, it sucks, and it's probably why a lot of normal people don't want to run for office, to be honest. And you know, I weathered the storm in the primary. I'm hopeful that the general election will go well. And I'm just really honored because, you know, whatever support I can get, I can help, you know, reach out to voters. And we have a very lean campaign. I will admit, when I first ran for office, I didn't know what I was doing as much, kind of like with the business, right? And so, you know, you hire people and people give you bad advice. Well, now I've got to the point where I'm like, I feel like I know the messaging. I feel like I know this. And it's a nice little streamlined machine I got going on here. So, yeah, so I'm hopeful that November 5th, but you know, you just never know what's going to happen. But any amount of support I can get, I'm so grateful for, and I would have showed up regardless. So,
Thanks, Michelle. Brandon.
Yeah, so I met Michelle when I was a dental student at UW, and Michelle helped me take down the school. Like, they were firing faculty because they're $40 million in debt. They were going to raise tuition, and I don't remember how I got in touch with her. I started a Facebook group, but she initiated a statewide audit on the UW School of Dentistry. She made every single one of those people at the school's lives living hells. We found out a lot about them.
that's not so good.
No, really, we found out a lot about what was happening at the school that no one would ever know. And we actually got a tuition freeze. The students got together, we got a tuition freeze. They basically started hiring the faculty back. I mean, programs were just going away in the school. So that was huge. I mean, she didn't know me, but she was like, hell yeah, I'm ready for a fight. That was my first experience with, you know, a politician. And then I learned that a lot of people are butthurt in your district because you get donations from outside, but mostly from dentists, right? Because,
yeah. Well, they'll say that. That's not a big deal.
But I think it's important because even people not in your district were dentists, and we want a dentist in Olympia, so that's important. My question, though, to you is on the back end of the processes where you can comment or you can go in and log in and say yay or nay or whatever. I feel like they just ignore that, actually.
Oh, I think a lot of people actually look at it. Because
how does that work on the back? I just want to know how it works on the back end. Because they just say whatever, we're going to do whatever we're going to do. We don't really care. And you get the canned response that says, oh, we actually know these are the statistics and we don't care what you think.
The hard part is that there are people who do ignore. There are absolutely politicians that ignore. I feel like there is a growing number of people who are like, and I'll just tell you, there's a group of us in Olympia, Republicans and Democrats, and we get together. And the Democrats can be like right now, Larry Springer, if you live in the 45th, which is Kirkland area, he voted no on the natural gas ban bill. Okay, he said, I don't think this is the right thing for the people. I don't think that's what my people want. Very much a Democrat, but his leadership recruited a candidate against him, and he is in the fight of his life. And the interesting thing is that as the numbers of Democrats will grow, because this is what's happened, is that you get more and more extreme views, okay? And the people who are not so extreme they're coming to, like we literally meet on a regular basis, because they're like, these people are crazy. You know, like there were 3 proposals to let Gary Ridgway out of prison, because 10 years is too long for a prisoner. It didn't matter if you murdered 64 women or not. And they're like, oh, no, we gotta let him out. And I'm like, is that what your people want? Do your people really want that? Like, I don't know if that's what the public wants, you know? And that's the thing, is it's like you vote against one of their bills, and there's a consequence to that. Just like I have a consequence, right? I endorsed a gay man, big whoop, right? But for the fringe people on our side, I don't meet their profile. I don't even care, right? And I think a lot of some of the Democrats are feeling the same way, where like we have one who owns, she owns a business. Her and her husband, they own a car dealership. And because she owns a business, she's ostracized from the socialists in her party, you know, and that, you know, she shouldn't own anything. And she's like, but we worked very hard for our business, and we did everything legally. We take very good care of our employees. I don't know why you guys are, like, if we don't have any businesses, we're not going to have the tax structure to pay for the government, you know? And that's the thing, is that I've seen some of the candidates coming forward. So we'll see what happens on November 5th. But I do think that things are going to change. But I think that there will be a bounce back as well, if that makes any sense. Kind of like with the police pursuits and stuff like that. And it's like, people are like, wait, what do you mean? Like, why is that okay that we have a whole area of Seattle that's closed down and we have chop and chas? Like, I don't think the average person is okay with that, right? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
So when they send us like canned responses, should we just keep firing back? Because I've just given up. I don't even bother anymore.
No. You have to. Because if everybody gives up, then what they think is that what they're doing is okay, if that makes any sense. So the only thing that we have on our side with some of these extreme policies, and I really believe this, I think that we have the public support. I don't think it really matters where people stand on the issue, but at the end of the day, I think people are absolutely afraid in certain communities of the crime rate going up, right? Like my daughter, she lived in Tacoma, and in a matter of 6 months, her car was stolen, not once, but twice. An insurance company, and you know, she was pregnant, she just had the baby, and insurance doesn't pay for the towing or anything like that. I didn't know that, you know, she didn't tell me until later on. But yeah, I mean, it set her back between the 2 towing bills, $3,000. And, you know, and she didn't want to bother me or anything like that. And I was like, honey, that's what phones are for. Like, you know, but that's the thing, is people are feeling the heat from that. People are feeling the heat when their food prices go up, right? I mean, if you're struggling to make ends meet and your gas just went up 50 cents a gallon and your energy costs just went up, if you're a PSE customer, it probably went up a good 38%. And that's the thing, is that matters, absolutely. I have areas where in my district, some areas are very affluent, some areas are very poor. And those poor people, you know, I'm sorry, but they live out of Keep Peninsula. There's no way that they could get an electric car. There's no, you know, like that's not a reality to them. And I have to represent poor people just like I represent everybody else. And it's like, these are regressive taxes that hurt them, you know?
So you just brought up the EV. Mm-hmm. So the EV tax incentive that was out just in August.
Yes.
Like, what happened to it? Like, why did it fail? My son was looking into it, and the dealers would take it off the purchase price, not off the lease price. So that's a huge difference on your payments.
Right. Okay. So there have been a number of EV incentives. Okay. So there are some incentives that did help with the lease. Okay. So I think those ones have gone away. And I think that what you're talking about is the newer one that was designed for people under a certain income level. And so it was supposed to help people get into an electric vehicle. However, there are so many rules around it, and there's so few cars that actually qualify that they're finding out that it's not truly helping a lot of people. So I did not realize that it was not going towards the lease though, because this stage of the game, in what I've seen, is that the resale value of an electric vehicle is very low. And there's a lot of issues with some of the electric vehicles, so a lease would actually make more sense in their case compared to way back in the day when I first bought my car and everyone's like, don't lease it, you gotta buy it, you keep it for a long time.
So in this situation, did the dealers take advantage of the situation? Or
I don't-
was the bill just very vague and it's up to the dealers to interpret?
So I think it was set up very poorly.
Yes.
And it also didn't actually have a whole lot of money in it. It is, so there's, okay, and here's the crazy part is one of the other things that the legislature will do is they'll create a program so that they can go out and tell people, oh, look, we're so fantastic. They don't fund the program. Like, oh, how about Medicaid? You have dental insurance. Did you know you have dental insurance? Oh yeah, we're gonna spread the peanut butter super thin and we're gonna pay the dentist 30 cents to pull out a tooth. And good luck finding a dentist that'll take it. And that's what they do is they create a program that isn't effective, that they can say that they have a program, you can tell people you have insurance. And gosh, it's just those greedy dentists that don't want to take it. You see what I'm saying? And I think that this is kind of part of it, because I remember when it was coming through, I was like, okay, this isn't gonna help that many people, right? And it didn't get that much funding either. Like the other programs that we had, which I think was like $8,000 off is what it was. And those ones were better, but then that ran out of money, so. But what you don't know is that the governor decided he was phasing out all hybrid and gas vehicles. So there's going to be more money put into EV. So if your son couldn't get it this year, I guarantee you that the next budget cycle, they're going to dump more money into it because there's no way they're going to reach their goals. Because I believe it's 2028 or 2030 where dealerships will be able to sell them anymore. And I believe it's 2032 where you will be able to sell your own vehicle to anybody in the state.
It's already happening in California, right?
They started it. It's a phase in, just like ours is. And same thing with Oregon. Because whatever California does, we gotta do it better.
The last thing I'll say, Michelle, is I know that there was a lot of talk about student loan forgiveness, and that's become pretty politicized. I couldn't imagine something more insulting to someone that paid off their own loans, student loan forgiveness. But I do think that the fact that interest on student loans is not deductible is something that when you're talking to leadership at the federal level, whether it's our Congress people or our senators, I don't know why that's never been on the table. That's a cost of doing business, is the education costs that we incur to become professionals. And the fact that we can't deduct the interest on that, especially when interest is so variable. Like new graduates, I don't know, if you've been out of school for less than a few years, it's incredibly, the economics of being a young professional now really give you very little choice about how you're going to practice, what you're going to do. And I think that simple thing, which seems reasonable to me, would have a positive impact and kind of normalize both cost of education, but also not make it like a lottery ticket. If you graduated in 06 or 03, you've got like a 2% interest rate. And you graduate in 2024 and you're at 7.5%.
So I do know that when I graduated, the threshold was 80% or $80,000 that you could deduct it, because I made $88,000 that first year and I couldn't deduct any of it. And I borrowed, when I graduated in 2001, it was $144,000 of student loan debt. And my minimum payment was, what is it, $1,400 a month. And, so if you're making $88,000 a year, that's a huge chunk of your money after taxes get taken out and everything. I absolutely agree with you.
I mean, Michelle, people are making 120 now, paying 6,700.
Wait, say it over
They're
again?
making like $120,000. Paying 6,700. Well, 6,700 a month would satisfy, so the principal doesn't go up. They're actually giving this gift that they can pay 4,000, but the principal's going up by 27,000.
Really?
It's really silly.
That's crazy.
So,
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree, and I will tell you that on the way over here, I just got an alert that Biden, because you gotta realize that during election time, I always call it silly season, and they'll do things so that, you know, they say, see, we're the good party, so we, you know, I will tell you, both parties are messed up, okay? And I'm just gonna be very honest with you. But they'll say, okay, well, you know, we're good, and so we're gonna pass this. And so Biden just announced that he's forgiving like $1.5 billion of student loans. But he's not allowed to do that. That's how it went up to the courts, and it has to pass through the legislative process. And I absolutely agree with you that for healthcare professionals, we need to figure something out. That is a federal thing, but yes, I completely agree with you, and we should have tax credit.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thank you so Thank you so much. I spent a lot of time.
Yes.
No, just like you were saying.
That's the one that we